What's going on, guys? CTG Matt back here with the title. Today I have 3 potential playoff matchups in the NBA that I would like to see. Plain and simple, these are just 3 playoff matchups that could potentially happen, may potentially happen, but I would be most excited to see them happen. Of course, I haven't talked basketball very much recently because I've been focusing on baseball opening days here. I'm actually sitting here with another tab open watching Chris Paddack get absolutely murdered by the Chicago White Sox. Watch some of the baseball content on the channel, and if you enjoy, like, comment, share, sub. I cover basketball and baseball. Keep it simple around here. We can go ahead and jump in, talk about the first potential playoff matchup I would like to see. That would be a potential matchup between the Rockets and the Clippers. The current time of recording, Rockets are the 2 seed, Clippers are the 8 seed. It could still happen. Don't get me wrong, I would really like to see it happen. Why is that exactly? Well, these are 2 elite defenses. You have number 3 in defensive rating versus number 4 in defensive rating. Both these teams, top 5 teams in defensive rating, elite defenses. They're also 2 of the best rebounding teams in basketball. The Rockets are number 1 in offensive rebounding percentage. They crash the glass hard. And then you also have the number 2 defensive rebounding team in the Clippers, of course, with their big guy Zubac, who is incredible at dominating the paint. Not to mention both of these teams are kind of rolling going into the playoffs. Houston's 9-1 in their last 10, and I believe the Clippers are 8-2 in their last 10. Now combine 3 losses out of these 2 teams' last 20 games. But what interests me, maybe not most, but definitely has me very much interested, I always love a good youth versus vets type playoff matchup. I was a big fan of the Suns versus the Timberwolves last year, where you had Edwards versus KD and Book. You know, KD and Book, two vets of the game trying to take on one of the youngsters, and Anthony Edwards. And of course, AE was getting them boys, beating them to shreds. You know, doing the DX suck it chant on them and everything like that. So yeah, I always like to see a little vet versus youth action, and that's kind of what you'd have if you pick Rockets versus Clippers like I would as well, because you have the youth in Houston, Amen, Jalen, Şengün, Jabari, Tari, guys like that, guys that don't have much playoff experience, if any at all. And then, of course, they do have their vets. They're Steven Adams, they're Fred VanVleet. You know, Dylan Brooks is even a vet at this point in his career. They have their vets too, but they are a very young team. And then you have the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Derrick Jones Jr. If it's a Zubac is younger than I thought. I think he's like 26 or 27. I always think Zubac's pushing 30. He's not, but he's still a vet, to be honest with you. He's been on multiple playoff contending teams. I'd consider him a vet at this point. I don't know if I mentioned Chris Dunn, Norm Powell. Like, the Clippers are an older, not old team, but they are definitely older than like a Houston Rockets. I just love the vet versus youth matchup, and I think that it pairs really well in this series, simply because the youth of the Rockets, there are a lot of wings. Amen he's a guard. He has guard skills, but he fits wing positions. He can play the 3, he can play the 4, just because of how bouncy he is. He jumps out of the damn gym. And then Tari Eason, big wing. Dylan Brooks, big wing. You know, a lot of their young guys, Jae'Sean Tate, big wing. You know, so they have a bunch of wings that they can throw at a Kawhi Leonard, who has been playing incredible basketball over the last, 3 weeks now. Kawhi's been back to his efficient scoring ways, and if you can have him healthy going into the playoffs, which I know, healthy Kawhi in the playoffs has been damn near a running joke in the NBA since 2019, you know, when he won the championship. So 2020 to 2025, the thought of healthy Kawhi has been a thought, it just hasn't been an execution. You get James Harden versus Houston in a playoff series, a place where he used to dominate other teams. He now has to go in there as the visitor and go try and beat them in, 2 games at least, or at least steal 1 on the Houston Rockets court, which has been one of the hardest feats to do in the NBA, beating the Houston Rockets at home. I'm so interested to see, Brooks, Eason, and Amen trying to guard up on Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi is such a stoic, I don't give a you-know-what type of guy. And he's got to face a guy who's constantly aggressive in a Tari Eason. Like I said, I've said it many times before. Tari Eason checks into a game and looks like he's about to give a flagrant foul like that. First layup he sees, he's shoving a guy out of the air. And this series would also be gold if you're one of those fans that really doesn't like too many threes. Sure, they take a good amount of threes, but the Clippers are middle of the pack in 3-point shooting, and the Rockets just aren't a good shooting team at all. They don't take a ton, albeit. So you wouldn't have that much perimeter shooting either. You would have a lot of mid-range work. Guys like Jalen Green and Kawhi Leonard obviously work the mid-range, while Fred VanVleet and James Harden take the tough 3-point shots that are kind of needed. Top of that, you may say, well, the Rockets have beaten the Clippers 3 times this year already. Why are you so interested in that? Kawhi Leonard has played in this many of the Rockets versus Clippers games this season. Of course, they still have one more game left on April 9th, I believe. Let me check that. Yes, they have one more matchup April 9th. We don't know if Kawhi is going to be playing or not, but if you get Kawhi Leonard in that game, it would be the first time we've seen Kawhi Leonard versus Houston this season, so that would definitely help a lot. Of course, like I said, though, it's been damn near a running gag for healthy Kawhi for a while now, but if you can get it, it's damn near one of the most pure buckets in the game. Plus, on top of that, the Rockets do like to play through the post a little bit. When you have a guy like Alperen Sengun, of course you're going to play through the post. I mean, the guy's incredible at what he does. He gets buckets, he passes well from out of the post. And then you have a guy like Zubac on the other end who's going to have to guard him. Zubac is amazing at what he does, which is holding down the paint and being an excellent roll man to pair with James Harden. On top of that, I just love to see James Harden in a playoff scenario because it really only goes two ways. Either one, he dominates, or two, he looks like James Harden the choker. And I love James Harden. Such a James Harden fan. But albeit he is playing in Houston for this playoff series, if it were to happen, I'm curious to see if he would try to turn it up a notch or outdo himself. Simply because he's back in Houston, where he made his name. Potential that this playoff series happens, and I'm so here for it. Jalen Green, if he can get loose against a Chris Dunn type guy, he is a lethal scorer. Of course, the Rockets are damn near perfect when he scores 30 or more. They're like 10-0 or something. But again, on the other side, you have recharged, healthy Kawhi Leonard, who is a Terminator bot, as we all know. Efficiency magnet, 40+% from three over the last month. 50% from the field type guy. Extreme efficiency. Kawhi Leonard, that's his name. That's the name of the game for Kawhi Leonard, is extreme efficiency. There's also high highlight probability. Tough to say right there. But you have a guy like Jalen Green who can yam it. Amen Thompson who can yam it. Derrick Jones Jr. who can throw down. There's highlight potential in this series as well. Great defensive matchups. Not a ton of three-point shooting. Young versus old matchup. I really think that this would be a fun matchup. Let me know down in the comments. I think if this is a series, it could sway either way in my opinion. Healthy Kawhi Leonard versus a very youthful Houston Rockets team with not a lot of playoff experience. Could Kawhi, outdo them simply because he has the experience and he knows what a playoff atmosphere is like? He's been on the biggest stages. Or would the youth finally take over when you have a guy like Jabari Smith? Or let's say, somebody like an Amen Thompson could make a name for himself in this series. Shutting down Kawhi Leonard, that's no easy feat, man. But if you can, you're gonna be held up here. You're gonna be held in way higher regard. But like I said, let me know down in the comments what you guys think this series would do. If I had to pick right now, I would probably say maybe like Houston in 7. I really think that this series would come down to the wire either way. I think the big deciding factor would be James Harden. The man has had his lowlights in the playoffs. We've seen it time and time again. I love the guy. He is one of the best shooting guards to ever touch a freaking basketball. One of the best 4, at least, in my opinion. Right? I'm curious to see how his playoff resume is going to hold up. Especially because he's still kind of the same player. He relies on a lot of ISO scoring, blah, blah, blah. Comment down below. Tell me who you guys think would win this playoff series if it were to happen. We can move on to the next one now. Up next, we're going over to the Eastern Conference. We're talking about the 1-seed Cleveland Cavaliers potentially being in a second-round matchup, if they were to make it, against the Indiana Pacers. These two teams have played 2 games against each other this season. 1-1. Both teams have taken 1 game. They have 2 more games left just in the month of April. Those are going to be some fun games simply because the Cavaliers have been playing kind of subpar basketball recently. They're 5-5 over the last 10. They're probably, if you extend that to the last 20, they're probably 15-5. But either way, why am I so interested in Cleveland versus Indiana, 2 Central Division teams? Simply because these are 2 explosive offenses. This is number 1 versus number 7 in points per game. Of course, the Indiana Pacers have also been a team that's really starting to catch fire at the right moment as well. If you ask me this question, who would win in a series between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Indiana Pacers in January? I would say Cavaliers in 3. 2 games maybe. If you ask me now, I'm not saying Cleveland would lose. I would still pick them to win, but I think that it might go 6, honestly. I think that that's probably the brink. I'm not willing to say Pacers in 7, but I do think that this would be a series that would provide some absolute hood classics. Both of these teams move the ball well. They're both top 10 in assists per game. Of course, they get them in different ways. You see how Halliburton gets his in the open court, finding guys trailers or guys going to the corner for 3, or even cutters. He's obviously one of the best passers in basketball. We know that. And then Cleveland, who gets theirs, not similarly to how a Boston gets theirs, but it's a 2 feet in the paint approach. Garland, Mitchell, 2 feet in the paint, pass, ring around the horn, find a 3-point shooter, or you get your assist by Evan Mobley running the floor, Jared Allen running the floor, and then getting a nice post mismatch down underneath the basket. Now all of a sudden all you gotta do is dump it down to Mobley, who's got like a 6'1" guard on him. Possession's over right there. These are some of the faster teams in the league as well. Both are top 10 in pace, which means we will get a fun game of up and down action, up and down consistently. And like I said, Donovan Mitchell, Tyrese Halliburton, these two are some of the faster guards in the league in terms of how fast they want to play and the pace they want to play at. The front court matchup is even better than the back court matchup in my opinion. You have Turner and Siakam versus Allen and Mobley. Of course, Allen and Mobley has like the all-star advantage, but Pascal Siakam's no bum. And then Miles Turner is one of the best rim defenders in basketball. Same with Jarrett Allen. He's a sneaky, really good rim defender. It helps he has Evan Mobley next to him, but either way. Also, with it being a second-round matchup, I'm curious as to how Carlisle and Atkinson would use their benches, because these two are the deepest teams in basketball, in my opinion. I mean, you look off the bench for both of their teams, and they both have one wing bench bucket, whether it's Bennedict Mathurin or DeAndre Hunter. Both of those guys can absolutely light it up off the bench. Both are obviously wings. That is if Aaron Nesmith is starting, because if Aaron Nesmith coming off the bench, then obviously Mathurin will move in. But of course, off the Pacers bench, TJ McConnell, Obi Toppin, Thomas Bryant's giving him some minutes as a backup 5-man. Jarris Walker, who's definitely taken a step up this season, in my opinion, even though he doesn't get a ton of PT. He's been pretty good, in my opinion. And then for Cleveland, obviously, with DeAndre Hunter comes Ty Jerome, Dean Wade, Isaac Okoro. This is quite literally the opposite of the Rockets-Clippers series that I proposed. These are two teams, although the Cavaliers are an elite defense, don't get me wrong. These guys score a ton of points. These are both elite offenses that are absolutely lethal, and they both get out in transition. They run a ton. This is a series that could produce a lot of scoring, and especially if somebody like Halliburton gets hot. I mean, Jesus, Halliburton can give you 19 and 19 like that. And then, of course, Mitchell can just give you 50 if he goes off. Of course, he's been kind of cooling off to end the season, but it's Donovan Mitchell, one of the greatest playoff performers of this generation. My God, if I could speak, I'd be amazing. I also think that this is a series that could help the Pacers a little bit. I'm not saying that they'd win. I would not project that they win this series, in my opinion. However, the Pacers do have the pace to be able to outrun the bigs, the Mobley Allen, simply because Tyrese Halliburton, you get the rebound, he is out in transition. He might play one of those bigs off the floor. They might be forced to run just Allen or just Mobley, simply because they might not have the foot speed to cover up when Tyrese Halliburton's getting out on the break with an Obi Toppin. I kind of am interested with that little backcourt matchup off the bench with McConnell versus Jerome. Those are two pesky, annoying, quite frankly, annoying guards to face. TJ McConnell, of course, with his little magic trick that he always does, where he blows past his man at the top of the key, but he never goes for the layup. No. He's going to damn near run the entirety of the baseline and then pull it back out and shoot a fadeaway mid-range. Either that or he's going to get an open look for the big man under the basket. TJ McConnell is just lethal. And then, of course, Ty Jerome and his shooting ability. He had a game where he shot 8 for 8 from 3, for Christ's sake. I mean, he can light it up. That's why he's in 6 Man of the Year talks. I just like the offensive explosiveness in this series is how I'm going to describe it. Like I said, Donovan Mitchell can go off like that, but I'm very curious to see how this Pacers team would do in a playoff series with a guy like Bennedict Mathurin, who's very good who can score in a half-court setting. He's a guy that can get a bucket in a one-on-one. If if he's got 7 seconds left on the shot clock, he's a guy that can make something happen. They didn't have him actually in the playoffs at all last year, so it would definitely help. The one thing I would be worried about for Indiana is that if Turner were to get into foul trouble, you'd be relying a lot on Thomas Bryant. And while I did just prop up Thomas Bryant saying he had some games, I wouldn't trust him in a full playoff series against Allen Mobley. They're just really good players. But overall, I think that this would be a very fun matchup. Two good three-point shooting teams, two very fast-paced teams. I just think that this would be really fun. Leave your thoughts down below if you guys would also like to see this playoff matchup. Let me know what your guys' pick would be for that series. For me, I would probably go Cleveland in 6, maybe 7. But I don't see Indiana winning this series per se. But having a fun series doesn't mean that both teams can win. Let's be frank here. The Celtics beat the Pacers 4-0 in the conference finals last season. Every game was fun to watch, in my opinion. Even though the Celtics won, and I know the Pacers fans might, well, my team lost. That's not really fun to watch. I feel that. But it was a really fun series regardless. Every game came down to the last minute. Even though it was 4-0, It was one of the most fun series in the playoffs last year in general. Yeah, the Pacers are able to throw on some hood classics. Same with the Cleveland Cavaliers, because their series against Boston last year, and they both faced Boston last year, and they both provided some of the more fun games of the playoffs, especially in the Eastern Conference that was kind of dry last season. So both these teams pulled out some dramatics. Both these teams keep it close, and both these teams play at a breakneck pace. I think this will be a fun series. We can move on to the next one. The last one I have for you is a rematch from the 2022 playoffs. I think it was a first-round matchup. It's Nuggets versus Warriors. So far, these two teams have matched up twice already. It's 2-0 Denver. The last game, obviously, no Nikola Jokic, and they still won the game because Aaron Gordon was that guy. No offense to Aaron Gordon, but I did not see him becoming an elite three-point shooter this year. However, he has been, and it's hilarious to see. He just annihilated the Golden State Warriors in their last game. Obviously, I referenced the 2022 I think it was first round, either first or second round. Either way, the Warriors beat the brakes off the Nuggets. It was a 5-game series. I remember who was the little guard? Facundo Campazzo was still on the Nuggets when that series was going on. Ever since the Jimmy Butler edition, the Warriors have been one of the better defenses in basketball. You combine that with the Denver Nuggets, who this season have not been a great defensive team in general, like at any point. Then on top of the 2022 matchup of Warriors versus Nuggets, you also get a Jimmy Butler versus Nuggets matchup, which was the 2023 NBA Finals. So Jimmy potentially gets his lick back. Maybe not. And then Draymond, obviously, versus Jokic. Draymond hates everybody. I'm curious to see what he would do to Jokic in a 7-game series. This time I'm thinking maybe he just grabs his arm and breaks it, i.e. Kelly Olynyk style. But similarly to that Cavs versus Pacers series, these are two of the best passing teams in the NBA. As according to NBA.com stats, the Warriors have the highest assist rate in the league, and the Nuggets are 4th. Both are top 5 in potential assists as well. These are two of the best passing teams in the league. Now, of course, they do it two different ways. How the Warriors do it is a lot of screening, a lot of off-ball screening as well. Curry running the show, running around screens, and then Draymond being one of their assist men. But adding Jimmy Butler, that's another guy who can get you 10 or more assists. Just made them way more dangerous of a passing team when they added Jimmy Butler. The Nuggets get most of their assists by just going to the post. You have Nikola freaking Jokic. He plays hub at the top of the key, or you dump it down to him in the post, and it's the same thing regardless. You're just running around a bunch of screens off the ball. Guys like Jamal Murray are screaming around screens. I think they're the most lethal pick-and-roll duo in the NBA. That is Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Jokic being maybe the best passer in basketball at the moment, up there with a Halliburton type, who we just talked about. But obviously, Jokic has the ability to dismantle an entire team. However, you have a guy like Draymond Green, who's one of the smartest defenders in the league. Also, Jimmy Butler, who is also one of the smartest, underrated defenders in the league in terms of how smart he is. I've seen that guy jump passing lanes way too many times as a Celtics fan, and it's giving me like Vietnam flashbacks to all those Jaylen Brown lazy passes that Jimmy was just picking off and running to the crib in 2022 or 2023. It was depressing, and I don't want to think about it anymore. I mean, I just find it interesting that you have maybe the smartest offensive player in basketball in Nikola Jokic versus maybe the smartest defensive player in basketball in Draymond Green. Of course, Draymond has to be able to stay on the court, which involves him containing his emotions, which he doesn't have a history of doing very well. Let's just be blunt with each other. But there are some things that favor the Warriors, in my opinion, as well. Steph Curry doesn't have to see Kentavious Caldwell-Pope anymore, who was one of the best Curry stoppers in basketball. Not really an opinion. I'm pretty sure that's just a fact. KCP was a very good Curry stopper. He chased him around screens. Of course, KCP was not shooting well in those series because of the fact that, hey, man, I'm doing 40 minutes of sprints around screens, getting hit every other second. Kind of hard to play offense and defense at that rate. I just think that the way these two teams attack the offensive end of the basketball is just going to make for must-see TV. Like I said, these two teams pass the ball a lot. It's a lot of ball movement. The Warriors turn it over a little bit more, but that's simply because it's an everyone touch it type of offense. Pause. Mega pause there. One touch it type of offense. What a sentence out of my mouth. All right. Versus a Denver Nuggets team who obviously it's one guy getting a majority of the touches and then everyone else playing off of him. They're one of the best cutting teams in the NBA versus, again, a really smart couple of defenders in Jimmy and Draymond who can definitely shut off some of those cutting lanes. My God, Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa both just left this Twins game that I'm watching, and the Twins season's over like that, folks. Congratulations, people of Minnesota. You don't have to watch baseball anymore. Baltimore. These are just two of the most crafty scoring teams in the NBA, with two of the better coaches in the NBA as well, Michael Malone versus Steve Kerr. Malone is obviously weirdly perceived in the NBA community. I think he's a really good coach. However, their bench is questionable. Oh, on top of bench, you also get Russell Westbrook back against the Warriors in a playoff series. You know he's going to come with some extra fire. You know he still don't like Draymond and Steph and them. You know that. I think it would lead to some very fun games, and I think it would lead to some very fun Draymond antics. When they're not against my team, I laugh at the Draymond antics, just when they're not against my team. But when he's kicking Jaylen Brown in the head, I start to get a little bit frustrated. If I had to pick a winner for a Nuggets versus Warriors series, I don't know exactly. I would have to pick Denver simply because I just don't trust the ability of the Warriors to be able to contain Nikola Jokic, with Draymond mainly being the cover guy, because I don't know if they trust a Quentin Post or a Kevon Looney to per se guard him for 40 minutes. I don't know if the Warriors would want to see that matchup either, so it would be probably predominantly Draymond Green guarding Jokic, which would make for some fun, like I said. But I would have to pick probably Denver, as well as the home court advantage. Denver's very hard to beat at home. The altitude obviously helps, but at the end of the day, bro, you're in the NBA. You should be well conditioned regardless of the altitude. I think the biggest X factor of this series would be a Michael Porter Jr. He's been abysmal the entire month of March, and I don't think anyone's talked about that. He's shooting like 30% from three this month, not this week, not these last 2 weeks. A month of shooting like 30% from three, downright abysmal. If he could somehow get right and get hot going into the playoffs, they could quickly erase this Warriors team. But if Mike Porter Jr. is being a void on defense, which Jimmy Butler eats people like him apart who don't try on defense, and if he can't score, if he just becomes a void on the court, which I'm going to be honest, he has been. His rebounding's down, his shooting's down. It seems like when he can't score, he just kind of flicks his brain off and just kind of tunes out of the game. I don't like to see that, but it happens with a lot more NBA players, honestly. But overall, I would still have to pick Denver, but it is because I think Michael Porter Jr. can turn it around. But if he can't, the Warriors could win that series, because it would really just be Jamal and Jokic versus Curry, Draymond, Jimmy, all the depth they have, Buddy, Quentin Post. They have a deep bench as well, kind of a deep bench. It's not great, but it's all right. Also, the Gary Payton injury definitely factors into this. That's a guy who could definitely guard Jamal Murray. That is just taken away from the Warriors. So I would still probably pick Denver, but albeit in maybe 7 games, because a Jimmy and Curry duo has shown to be very lethal and dangerous. That's all I got for now, but if you guys enjoyed this video, I'm sure I can make a couple more. The way you show me you enjoyed this video is by, well, watching it first, but then liking and potentially even subscribing if you enjoy it. Go watch some baseball. Go outside, upstate New York, where I'm at today. Beautiful freaking weather. I'm about to go for a walk or something. Touch some grass, fellas. I'm going to go catch the game. See you guys in the next one.